Hi, third grade. We are on to our next week of videos for your science lessons. We are still going to be talking about weather and climate, and we're going to start off this lesson with a video.
Hi, it's Doug. I want to tell you a true story from my life. One winter day, when I was 10 years old, my family and I drove to the airport near Chicago. That was near where I lived. We were there to pick someone up, someone that my father said would be living with us for an entire year. Her name was Shelley. She was an exchange student. That's someone who comes over from another country and lives with your family for a while. Shelley had flown all the way from a country in Africa. I'll never forget meeting her for that first time because once we picked her up and got her outside the airport to our car, she was so excited. She looked all around us and shouted, "It's snow!" Shelley had only ever seen snow on television. She'd never actually seen it or touched it her entire life. I remember what she said. She goes, "Wow, it glitters." Then, before we could even say anything, Shelley ran straight for a big pile of snow, jumped in, and started rolling around in it. She stopped and looked up at us with really wide eyes and squealed, "Ah, it's so cold!" I laughed because to me that was obvious. I'd seen snow every winter for my whole life. In fact, it would snow so much in wintertime that I would get sick of it. I'd be so ready for the warm days of summer to come back each year. But that evening, meeting Shelley for the first time, I learned that Shelley had grown up in a very different place than me. She was from the country of Zimbabwe in Africa. And not only had she never seen snow, in fact, it almost never even gets cold in Zimbabwe. It's always warm, even in the winter months. She told me that just earlier that day, before she left Zimbabwe, she'd been wearing shorts and had been sweating because it was so hot, and that her friends were going swimming. Now imagine me over in Chicago. Now, here in winter, it'd be freezing cold for me. It would be months before I'd be able to go in a pool. And Shelley, she said that she'd come from somewhere on Earth where it was so hot that she'd been sweating? I said to Shelley, "I wish I lived where you came from. That seems like the most amazing place ever. A place that's warm all year, in summer and in winter." Shelley smiled. She said, "Are you kidding me? I'm so excited that I get to now spend time living where you come from. I've always wanted to see snow my whole life." I never thought of the weather where I lived as being anything special. To me, it was just normal. And Shelley never thought of the weather where she lived as being anything special. To her, that was normal. Each of the places we were from were special to someone else. We just hadn't realized it because we hadn't left our areas. We were used to them. Now that I've studied science, I know that these areas are each part of what we call different climates, places on Earth where the weather always acts a certain way. For example, I lived in a climate where there are big seasonal differences. The summers are nice and warm, but the winters are cold and snowy. But Shelley lived in a climate where there are no seasonal differences. The summers are nice and warm, and the winters are nice and warm too. What about you? What's the climate like where you live? Is it more like where I grew up, or where Shelley grew up? Or is it something even different from that?
All right, so I want you to get your science notebooks out, and I want you to answer the question from the video. What is the climate like where you live? Is it more like where Doug grew up in Chicago, or is it more like where Shelley grew up in Zimbabwe? And then I want you to explain your answer. Explain why our climate is more like Doug's or why our climate is more like Shelley's. And then I will have more lessons for you to look at in our coming up. As always, if you want to share any of your work, you can email me at diana.capel@ops.org. I will be talking to you guys soon. Bye.